damn you! God damn you all to hell!
In 1945, George Orwell published a book called Animal Farm, a story that was meant to act as social commentary on political rule. It follows the story of farm animals who rebel and take over the property from humans and try to set up a new system in an attempt to improve their lives, hoping to run a more civilized social environment than the humans did. But over time, power corrupts them, and they eventually become the very thing they set to rid from the farm. And the destructive cycle was doomed to repeat itself. It all began with those infamous words: all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others. These are the words spoken by the villain of the story, Napoleon, who manipulates the revolution for his own personal gain. This is usually how things like dictatorships and fascism start, which actually makes sense seeing as how George Orwell got inspiration for the story from the Russian Revolution and Joseph Stalin's rise to power. The parallels between the revolution and what happens in this story are creepily similar once you look into it more. The way the pigs turn the farm into a totalitarian dictatorship is a spitting image of Stalin's government, even showing how Napoleon twisted the ideology of Old Major for his own use, which is reflective of Stalin being influenced by Karl Marx. It's very straightforward with how the pigs use propaganda, fear, and lies to manipulate and control the farm, making the other animals too afraid or ignorant to question them. It's a dark and twisted story about a revolution being manipulated for the self-gain of a dictator, with an equally twisted ending that shows the end result of this corrupt shift in power. Now, I personally never read the original book, though I do hear it's a very interesting and well-written story, but I did watch the movie adaptations from 1954 and 1999. The animated 1954 version is very fascinating, being a very close and faithful adaptation of the original book. And although the 1999 live-action movie isn't exactly good, it still treats the source material with appropriate gravitas. The subject matter of the original book was extremely dark and adult, so these film adaptations should have that same tone. It covers a very relevant topic that still plagues society to this day, and these movies are very straightforward and honest about how scary and depressing it is, how the evils and exploits surrounding politics are very gradual and faint, so you don't notice it until those in power are already too big in size to take down. It's really in tune with the message George Orwell meant to send with this story, how dictators can be created from all systems, whether they be liberal, conservative, or somewhere in the middle. It's so much more nuanced and compelling to think about than just blaming everything on the Republicans like a lot of people do today. You can argue it may be a product of its time considering what was on Orwell's mind when he wrote the story, but in an age where politicians around the world are more openly and abrasively evil than ever before, this is a story that definitely acts as an accurate mirror of modern human civilization. All that's really changed is the name and faces of those in power. It's scary but also interesting to think about, how a story about talking farm animals is able to represent one of the most dangerous ongoing cycles plaguing our society. So you might be wondering, does the Seth Rogen adaptation treat the story with a faithful representation of its source material?
Look at all this deliciousness! They want this!
Yeah, a blind deaf monkey can figure this one out. I mean, just look at the poster, for crying out loud. All the characters smiling and huddling up like they're pals in a warm background. Does this in any way represent the tone of the original story? It looks like something for a TV movie on Disney Junior. And if you can't handle that, you will definitely not survive the movie itself. It may just be me, but the animation is really ugly. It comes across as low budget and cheap like a Netflix movie, and it doesn't do anything to faithfully capture the tone of the story. It's extremely colorful and bright with the contrast on everything being really strong. It's really distracting and definitely not a problem the original animated movie had. It had a dimmer direction to its art style which fit the dark tone of the story, and it was also easier on the eyes. It made the grimmer stuff feel more detailed because it wasn't focused on being colorful. It was focused on capturing the gravitas of the subject matter. It made the atmosphere easier to settle into, which allowed you to feel more in place with the movie setting. This feels like it's trying to use shiny colors to grab your attention and distract you from how embarrassing the story and characters are, which they absolutely are. Every character in this movie is annoying. They all have very misdirected voice acting and an obnoxious way of speaking. They have to say all this modern talk like rad or don't break it before you make it, and that is really distracting and unfitting for the source material. This doesn't do anything to make the movie timeless like the book it's clearly adapting from. All it does is make it more dated. None of them have any memorable personalities and all their screen time is just a bunch of dumb running jokes. Like this one sheep who gets shaved and thus is less of a sheep than the other sheep because it's supposed to be metaphorical or something. Or this one Beverly Hills girl pig who just acts like a diva while on her phone, because it's a kids movie in 2026. So we have to be hip with the kids who will absolutely be filling up the theater seats for this trash we put out. They even had to throw in this entirely new character Lucky in order to create this new storyline where he has a father-son bond with Napoleon. except it really amounts to nothing while taking time away from the story's message. Because oh no, we can't make an Animal Farm movie that faithfully focuses on the dangers of revolution and authoritarianism. We have to make it a generic baby movie where the hero is a bright-eyed youth who's misguided by the bad guy and learns to do the right thing at the end and blah blah blah. Never mind the original message George Orwell was trying to send with his book. We have to focus on him trying to impress a girl he has a crush on. He's not even an endearing protagonist. He's just a by-the-number run-of-the-mills character you would see in this type of story. Not to mention how horrific the pacing is. It goes by really fast to the point it doesn't even properly develop the message it's trying to send about capitalism, which is really offensive considering the actual message of the source material, but we'll get to that later. It doesn't even show the cruelty of Farmer Jones or how horrible he was at running the farm. It just opens with the bank repossessing his farm because he doesn't pay the mortgage. It's called Show Don't Tell for a reason. The animals in this movie always talk about how cruel humans are as a result of their experiences with Farmer Jones, but we never actually see anything that would lead them to wanting to revolt. All we get is them finding out they're being taken to a slaughterhouse and they do the whole revolution thing in the first 3 minutes of the film. Farmer Jones isn't even a character in this movie. He's literally there for less than a minute of screen time. You know how the original book and the 2 other movies had a slower build-up to the animals taking over the farm to set the groundwork for the cautionary tale Orwell was going for? Well, not in this movie. They just do a baby montage of them beating up the humans without any of that meaningful suspenseful build-up. The entire movie is like this. It can't decide if it wants to slowly take its time to tell a compelling story or waste time on kiddie filler before skipping right to the next story beat. And it also causes a really inconsistent tone. Most of the movie is juvenile entertainment for 2-year-olds. They have all these infantile attempts at comedy like toilet jokes and other jokes with the cows and twerking, because that stuff would totally not make Orwell roll in his grave. But then they suddenly have these darker scenes like Boxer being taken to the glue factory. Hey, considering everything else they changed in this movie, I'm surprised they kept that. So much of the movie is extremely juvenile and obnoxious, and then it just randomly throws in this darker stuff like it's supposed to be dramatic and serious. These more dramatic scenes are given no sense of proper build-up or establishment, and they're not supported by the rest of the movie because of how juvenile and childish it is. So much time is wasted on dumb filler like the shopping montage or this pool party they have. So the message they're going for isn't given any time to have weight. Not to mention all the painful ways they modernize the setting and feel of the story. It has all these horrible pop songs, like that horrible rap version of Old MacDonald Had a Farm. Seriously, an Old MacDonald rap in an adaptation of Animal Farm. It's like they're pushing the envelope for how filthy you're supposed to feel for subjecting yourself to this trash. And not to mention how they severely downplay darker aspects of the story. The scene where they explore the house and are supposed to be disgusted by all the stuff they find is all played up for comedy. No showing of dead animals or anything like that. They have to censor the word alcohol and just replace it with naughty juice. Because as we learned from Disney, we're in a pussy era where we're not allowed to mention beer. They even have to do this dumbass narration throughout the movie in case you're a 3-year-old who needs to be reminded of the events of the movie leading up to this point. Not to mention how the modernization of the setting leads to a giant plot hole in the story. I get that a human taking interest in doing business with the farm is in tune with the original book, but throwing in this modern-day multi-billion-dollar company just makes it completely illogical. Why does this woman care about the farm? Why does she bother when she's already making a shitload of money? Wouldn't it just damage her public image that she's insane enough to talk to animals? Not to mention all the dumbass changes to the original story that undermine the message it was going for. Lucky being a good guy, which goes against how the pigs represented Stalinism, Boxer sacrificing his life to save a human, you know, the very thing he was revolting against? Or how about Napoleon blowing up the watermill himself instead of the humans doing it? Or maybe how completely in your face Napoleon's rise to power is. In the original story it was a slow burn to paint a picture of how gradual and unsuspecting the corruption of politics is supposed to be. But here they just speed blitz to him taking charge of the farm, and he's so painfully obvious in how he's selling out the other animals. It just makes them look like idiots for not rebelling until after Boxer's death. There is zero subtlety to how it happens. It's completely condescending and insulting. It doesn't even have any logic within its own setting, like how they just invite humans onto the farm to pay the mortgage. Why is the bank taking money from animals anyway? Animals can't legally own property, so they would just take the farm anyway. And why are the animals inviting humans on the farm? One of their literal commandments is that anything that walks on 2 legs is the enemy. And why does the banker just accept a bucket of money for the mortgage? They don't even give an exact amount of money. He literally just takes a bucket of money to pay the mortgage. Not to mention how the iconic "some animals are more equal than others" line is completely bullshit here. The movie didn't do anything to focus on socialism. The entire movie did nothing to commentate on political corruption or the rise of Stalinism. So it's just a meaningless reference because it happened in the book. This movie doesn't do anything to earn its serious moments. Most of it is just infantile baby jokes and meaningless fluff and predictable overplayed cliches. And you'd think all that would be bad enough. But what really makes this movie such an offensive adaptation, you know, on top of the toilet toilet jokes and terrible story and awful pop songs and dated modern talk is how it completely ignores the original message George Orwell was trying to tell. Andrew Serkis literally said he wanted this to be about capitalism instead of revolution and dictatorship. Because, oh, it's a different time. I think he would have written the story differently if it was made today. No. Fuck you, you piece of shit. Making Animal Farm about anything other than revolution and how it can be corrupted for dictatorship and socialism completely goes against the story Orwell wrote. Animal Farm was made from the ground up to be a response to Joseph Stalin. It was made as a commentary on the Russian Revolution and how we can end up in a cycle of corruption. Making it about capitalism generalizes and sanitizes the weight of the subject matter. They literally just spit on his original work by doing this. It's not even Animal Farm anymore. It's just a shitty kids movie that uses the likeness of his work to gain attention. This movie treats Animal Farm like it's a story for kids when it was very adult and covered a very relevant topic. They literally looked at the original animated movie, saw that it was focused on talking animals, and made that the baseline for the entire movie. Duh, it's a kids movie with talking animals. No one will care that we're desecrating a classic literary story based on one of the most evil people in human history. We can't make a movie about how bad communism is because then we wouldn't be able to market it to all the screeching kids who will irritate their parents to take them to see this garbage. We need to have toilet jokes and pop songs and modern slang because that's what kids want, duh. There is nothing smart or engaging about anything in this movie. It doesn't even tackle its own subject matter in a way that's thought-provoking. It just blurts out so many obvious things without actually trying to properly educate people. It's not even a good anti-capitalist movie because of how illogical and tone-deaf it is. If it just wanted to be a dumb kids movie, that would be one thing. But they made this out to be an adaptation of a very serious and very important story, and they turned it into the complete opposite of what it was trying to say. I don't want to put the blame on Seth Rogen as he is a capable individual, and was most likely just fulfilling some sort of contract as part of his voice acting job. If anyone is at fault, it's Andrew Serkis and Angel Studios for giving birth to this mountain of pig shit. Fuck Andrew Serkis and fuck Angel Studios to the deepest depths of torment for this rot. There is no doubt in my mind that this movie is the top contender for the worst of 2026. The lengths they go to modernize this story is blatantly offensive. If you want an animated kids movie about animals rebelling against farm owners, watch Chicken Run. If you want a movie with a serious message regarding tech-savvy companies trying to own everything, watch John Carpenter's They Live. Animal Farm 2026 fails at both of these things in the most literal sense that it can. It never presents a meaningful allegory for what it's preaching about, and it's so painfully brain-dead with its rotted sense of humor. Honestly, that video they put out trying to guilt-trip the people criticizing this trash should have been a very clear baseline for how little they cared. It barely follows the plot structure of the book, and even when it does, it's completely offset by its babyish tone. This is on the same level of spite as Snow White 2025, a remake of a beloved classic that was made with no love for the source material and is only related in name only, because from beginning to end, it is nothing but Angel Studios and Andrew Serkis shoving their middle fingers in your face for having even an iota of care for Animal Farm. And the final takeaway from all of this is that maybe we treated the 1999 movie too harshly.